Welcome to Narrative Strokes. It's quiet in the morgue. The refrigeration unit hums. The overhead lights click softly every so often, like they're thinking about burning out. I always wear headphones, but I rarely play music anymore. I've gotten used to the stillness. It's the one part of the job I actually like. I don't deal with people. I don't do autopsies or paperwork. I just prep, log, and store bodies. Bag in, tag on, slide the drawer shut. That's my rhythm. My boss, Dr. Keller, is the one with the clipboard. He's efficient, barely speaks unless he has to, and I've always appreciated that. We mostly trade notes on the whiteboard in the hallway outside the cold room. One time, I made the mistake of asking if he'd always worked with the dead. He stared at me for a full 3 seconds and said, "No, I used to work with children." Then he went back to arranging scalpels. I never asked again. Dr. Keller left for a pathology conference 2 weeks ago. Told me he'd be gone at least 18 days, maybe longer. He scribbled down a few guidelines on the board before he left. No walk-ins, incoming calls go to voicemail, and don't forget to lock the cooler. I didn't ask why. The days have blurred since. I've been keeping track of time mostly by the meals I remember eating and how often my phone needs charging. Except now, it never makes it past 1:13 a.m. before dying. No matter how full the battery is. I thought it was just a glitch. I even switched cables, rebooted. Nothing helped. It kept dying at the same exact minute. I didn't think it meant anything. Not until the man from Tuesday night opened his eyes. Male, mid-30s, found collapsed in a bus shelter. No ID, autopsy pending. Keller had logged the intake notes before leaving, so I was the one to receive the transport. He was average height, lean, tattoos on his ribs and upper arms. Nothing stood out, no trauma, no blood. Just gone. Natural causes, maybe. They said his eyes were still open when he was found. I closed them when I transferred him to the drawer. He was drawer 6B. 3 days later, I opened 6B to move him to staging for examination. His eyes were open again. Not just open, they were watching, focused directly on me. I froze, one hand still gripping the metal handle of the drawer. I didn't move, didn't breathe. I thought maybe rigor had eased and something shifted. Maybe gravity rolled him that way? But that didn't explain the expression. He didn't look empty. He looked aware. Then his lips moved. At first, I thought I was imagining it, the way light catches on moisture, or how a cooling muscle might twitch. But it wasn't that. It was deliberate. He whispered something, just one word. Rachel. I stepped back so fast I almost tripped over the stool near the counter. I just stood there, staring at him, pulse racing, waiting for him to do it again. He didn't. He just lay there, still as death, eyes dull and unfocused again. Just a body. I checked the room. I checked the cameras. I even turned around to see if maybe someone had walked in and said my name. But I was alone. The morgue was sealed. The hallway was dark. Eventually, I slid the drawer shut and locked it. And then I went to the sink and threw up. I didn't sleep that night. Not really. I dozed on and off with the overhead lights on, sitting up on the couch with my phone in my hand. The screen was at 47% when I last looked. Then it blacked out. I hit the side. Nothing. It wouldn't even light up when I plugged it in. The power cord was warm. The phone was not. It was 1:13 a.m. The next morning, I considered calling Dr. Keller. But what was I going to say? Hey, one of the corpses said my name, and I think my phone's haunted. Should I switch drawers or exorcise them or something? Instead, I walked back into the morgue, half expecting drawer 6B to be empty. It wasn't. He was still there, still tagged, still dead. But now his mouth was slightly open, and his tongue was bit down hard, like he tried to hold something in. I didn't touch drawer 6B again for 3 days. I focused on the intake logs, bagged, tagged, entered notes. I wore gloves, avoided mirrors, and started checking the cooler logs twice per shift. Sometimes 3 times. Nothing else happened. Nothing moved. The dead stayed still. Until Friday. The body came in early. Female, 50s. No next of kin listed. Keller must have submitted the paperwork remotely because it was waiting on the clipboard when I came in. The transfer team had already placed her on the table. Her arms were crossed, loosely, like someone had done it out of courtesy, not protocol. Her face was still streaked with river silt. Drowning, most likely. I was halfway through cleaning her when she twitched. Not a spasm, not postmortem nonsense. This was sharp, purposeful. Her hand clenched into a fist, then opened again. I froze, waiting to see if she'd move again. Nothing. Her eyes were closed, jaw slack, skin cold. I leaned in slowly, heart thudding in my ears, and then she spoke. Not a whisper, a sentence. The water never got warm. My breath caught. I backed up so fast I knocked the basin over. Water sloshing across the tiles. She didn't move again, didn't speak, but the sentence stuck with me. Not just the words, the tone. Resigned, soft, almost embarrassed, like it was something she'd wanted to tell someone for a long time. That night, I sat in the break room with all the lights on, eating dry toast because I couldn't stomach anything heavier. I checked the clock, 1:10 a.m. My phone screen showed 39% battery. I locked it, waited. At exactly 1:13, the screen died in my hand. I started talking back. Not out loud, not at first, just in my head. Questions, the kind you whisper to yourself when you're half asleep and trying to logic your way out of panic. Why me? Why now? Why only when Keller's gone? I started keeping a notebook, every incident time-stamped. I didn't know if it was for myself or for him, if he came back and I was too far gone to explain things clearly. Or maybe I just needed to convince myself that something real was happening, something that could be documented, graphed, measured. So far, I had 3 entries. July 12th, drawer 6B, male, spoke name, Rachel. July 15, prep table, female drowning victim, said the water never got warm. July 16, no incident, headache, phone battery dropped 28% in 4 minutes. The next one was different. It was Sunday, mid-shift. No new arrivals. The place smelled like bleach and metal. I was doing inventory when I heard the sound, not a whisper, knocking. 3 dull thumps. From inside the cold drawer wall. I waited, held my breath, then checked each lock one by one. When I reached drawer 4A, I stopped. The handle was frosted over. I wiped it with my sleeve. My hands were shaking. Then, from the other side, came a voice, muffled, hoarse, male.
I saw the lights before I hit the truck.
That's all he said. Not my name, not a question, just a memory. I stood there a long time, hand on the drawer, waiting to see if he'd speak again. He didn't. I stopped sleeping altogether after that. I tried caffeine crashes, white noise apps, melatonin, but every time I closed my eyes, I'd hear something. A knock, a voice, a static sound just under my hearing. One night, I thought I felt someone brush my shoulder while I was walking past the freezers. I turned. Nothing. But when I looked down, the tag on the nearest body had a smudge on it. Grease or ash. A fingerprint. It wasn't mine. I asked a question, finally. It was Monday night, just past midnight. I was alone, as always. I stood in the middle of the cold room, surrounded by drawers, and said it out loud. Why are you talking to me? Silence. Then, after a moment, from somewhere behind me, we'll stop when you find out. That's when I started thinking about the upstairs file room. I hadn't been up there in months, maybe longer. The stairs creak when you step on them, and the whole floor smells like wet paper and stale paint. I hadn't gone yet, not then, but I started thinking about it, a lot. I should have gone up to the file room the moment Keller left, but something about it made my chest tighten every time I thought about it, like the stairs were just waiting for me to step wrong. So I kept avoiding it, told myself I was just tired, overworked, imagining things, that the dead couldn't talk, and if they could, they sure as hell wouldn't waste time on someone like me. But then I finally went upstairs. The file room was musty and dim, stacked high with old records. I needed answers to make sure none of the talking corpses were repeat entries. Maybe I'd imagined the voices. Maybe I'd read a name earlier and subconsciously filled it in later. Something rational. The drawers were unlabeled, and the files were scattered. Most were faded, handwritten, some with photo attachments. I flipped through at random until a tab caught my eye. Morgan Rachel, intake ID 4429. Date of death July 6. Status verified. Cause blunt force trauma, posterior skull. Assigned drawer 3C. I read it twice. Then again, there was no photo, just my name, first and last, spelled right, my handwriting in the corner. I always scribbled my initials when I logged temperature corrections, RM, and they were there, next to the intake time, 1:13 a.m., the same time my phone had been dying every single night. I told myself there had to be another Rachel Morgan, someone with the same name, some clerical glitch. Except, drawer 3C was empty. It shouldn't have been. I checked the main chart. There was no log of removal, no transport signature, no prep sheet, no cremation slip, just blank space, like whoever had been there was gone, or never arrived. The next morning, I opened the fridge to grab my lunch and stared for a moment. My sandwich wasn't there. Neither were the leftovers I thought I packed the night before. I frowned, checked the break room table, then the staff locker. Nope, nothing. Maybe I forgot. Maybe I only thought I'd packed it. I tried to remember the last proper meal I'd had, but my brain came up with a blur. Toast, maybe? Something quick. Or was that 2 nights ago? I checked my phone. The battery was full, but the date said July 6. I blinked, hit refresh, checked the wall calendar. It said July 19. I turned back to the phone. It still said July 6. I powered it off. That night, I heard 3 voices. Not whispers, full conversations, disjointed, overlaying one another like radio static from different frequencies. One was a woman crying softly. One was a man gasping for breath. One was just a word, repeated again and again. Almost. I sat on the floor near the coolers, breathing into my knees. That's when one of the drawers slid open behind me, just a few inches, enough to let the air hiss out, enough for the voice to carry. "You're not gone," it said. "You're just not listening." I lay awake after that, eyes fixed on the ceiling. Keller was due back tomorrow. Maybe things would go back to normal when he was finally here. But I wasn't prepared for what came next. A new body arrived that morning. A stretcher rolled quietly into the cooler, and as I lifted the sheet, I froze. There she was. Me. Or at least a version of me. Pale and still. The skin blotchy and mottled, swollen where the blood had settled. The faint scar on the wrist, the only detail I recognized for sure. I stumbled back, heart pounding. The cold floor rushed up to meet me. My head hit hard. Blackness. When I came to, I was lying on the cold tile, muscles aching, breath shallow. I must have passed out. That's what I told myself. I looked around, disoriented. The room was quiet, the hum of the fridge filling the space. I glanced at my phone. Dead. I plugged it in and sat back against the wall. The days have blurred since. I've been keeping track of time mostly by the meals I remember eating and how often my phone needs charging. Except now, it never makes it past 1:13 a.m. before dying, no matter how full the battery is. I thought it was just a glitch. I even switched cables, rebooted. Nothing helped. It kept dying at the same exact minute. I didn't think it meant anything, not until the man from Tuesday night opened his eyes. Thank you for listening to today's story. If you enjoyed it, then comment down below and let me know what you think. I'll see you next time with another story. Until then, keep smiling and don't forget to like and subscribe.